I'm Katie Easterly Marte, and I have the pleasure of kicking off today's webinar. I think we'll wait just 2 more minutes to be sure that we capture everyone who's looking to participate, and then we'll get started.
Oh, you want? Okay.
I can make mine louder.
No.
And just a request, folks, if you could mute yourself, and then once we get started, we'll ask you to turn your video off, except for the speaker.
Great. Well, let me get started. I am Katie Easterly Marte. I have the pleasure of knowing many of you as partners of CDFA. So I'm the Executive Director of the Community Development Finance Authority, and I have the pleasure of kicking off today's webinar, which is our application webinar for the 2023 program year of the Microenterprise Grant Program. I'll start with a short overview of the importance of microenterprises, which you all know so well, and share some data about that, and then some changes and improvements that we're making in the program for this year based on your feedback. And I will then move the presentation to Kevin Peterson, the Director of Economic Development, who will go through the program for this year and the application. The goal of this workshop is to provide all our partners additional information about the Microenterprise program, which is funded by the Community Development Block Grants, and also to provide specific information to those who are planning to apply of how to use the application this year and provide that great information about what's happening in your community, so that we can understand that as part of the application process, and then move into recommendations for awards of funding and then contracts to kick off the 2023 micro program, which will start July 1st, 2023. So I think many of you know of CDFA, so the Community Development Finance Authority. We're a private nonprofit. We serve all of New Hampshire, and our goal is really to serve all of the evolving community economic development and clean energy needs of New Hampshire's communities, and we do that through partnerships with nonprofits, businesses, and municipalities. Next slide would be great. Many of you work with us to really help communities revive themselves, realize their economic development goals, and to bring resources to those activities. We fund these activities through a variety of resources, including, which we'll talk about today, the Community Development Block Grants, the State Tax Credit Equity Program, loans from our Clean Energy Fund, and technical assistance to ensure that we're aligning appropriate funding resources with on-the-ground needs. These are pictures from Franklin, and in Franklin, we invested a variety of economic development project resources, including facade improvements, affordable housing funding, energy efficiency dollars, nonprofit capacity, and there was a unique private public partnership that created the first whitewater park in New England. Many of you know about this project, and some of you were actually directly involved in really making these projects come to life in Franklin. What's resulting in Franklin is a new sort of vibrancy in the downtown, serving people in healthier and safer housing, attracting new businesses. There's additional private housing development happening right now in Franklin, expanded tourism, and a growing tax base. And as many of you know, Franklin is one of New Hampshire's most challenged former mill towns. Many of the businesses in Franklin's downtown are very small, like in many of your communities, with just a few employees, such as outdoor whitewater sports shop, a microbrewery and brew pub, and a coffee bar and gift shop. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why we all do this work and what the importance of small business development is, which you all are so very aware of, but we really recognize and want to highlight. Next slide, please. So even pre-COVID, our economy saw the lowest unemployment rate in a quarter of a century. We were at that point seeing low interest rates. We're now seeing high interest rates. But what we understand is that in these evolving, changing economic times, that it's really important that we support small businesses who really are experiencing these sways and are needing to build the skills and have the capacity to meet all of these changing economic conditions. And while there was growth, and now there's sort of growth in some sectors and obviously a rising of interest rate, we know that that growth, even when it was more consistent across businesses, was not true in all of our communities. So in rural places, for low skilled workers, for people of low income, there was an increasing opportunity gap. And so this is where the microenterprise program really focuses, is ensuring that people who are historically from low income households have the opportunity to access technical assistance and financing that allows them to grow a potential small businesses. And we know that this really works. You all give data to us, and we really learn from that data. And in one study, we actually of a group of microenterprise businesses, we saw that those businesses, when supported with this technical assistance, more than 90% of them, after 3 years of assistance, grew out of that low and moderate income category. So their household income was no longer considered low and moderate income, but was now risen above that level. One of the things that we've been really excited about is that wage growth, the wage growth of many of those small businesses that you all serve or that you're looking to serve. And then over time, we've actually learned a lot more about the statistics of poverty and how they really skew to people of color and other groups that really have been disadvantaged in our economy. And part of that is really accessing equity and capital to be able to grow assets and grow your business. So last year, for the first time, we added 2 new areas of opportunity in the micro program to get down payment and closing cost assistance for real estate. One of our subrecipients actually used that program, and we learned so much from their use of it, and we're so thankful for that creativity that they brought to it. And then also for equipment. So we have funds that actually help small businesses to acquire equipment purchases as well. And so this really allows the small businesses, to build assets and to continue the growth of their assets along with their wages. So we're excited to continue those parts of the program this year. And then we actually have some additional flexibilities in the program that we're excited about as well. And again, just continuing to understand what those needs are across the state, and then to ensure that the micro program really is meeting those needs. And as we talk about sort of those larger needs that the micro program is looking to really fill, I think you will agree with me that our communities become that sort of that hopefully fertile ground that really helps a business to grow. And for people, particularly those who haven't had access to the economy, to really gain that access. Next slide, if you will, Chris, to additional education, skill building, and funds that allow them to really prosper as an individual and with their business and move out of that low income position. So we like to think of the CDBG CDFA microenterprise program as being part of the solution, community-based solutions that really ensure that small businesses have access to what they need. And the microenterprise program is strongest because it really brings together so many partners across the state to do this work. So as much as it's complicated to bring together a municipal applicant, which the Community Development Block Grant Program requires, along with subrecipients, which are our nonprofit subrecipients that provide the business technical assistance. Those subrecipients often work with specific technical assistance providers, whether those be technical assistance providers that are people in your community that have that skill set and volunteer to provide those services, or whether they are contracted contracted providers of services to small businesses, including the Small Business Development Center, which many of you work with for business planning and specific business advising as part of this program. It really takes that complicated and coordinated ecosystem to meet the evolving needs of all the small businesses across New Hampshire. And that's what we really look for this program to do, is bring together that municipal partner with you all as nonprofit partners, and then really leveraging the skill sets in our communities. So definitely a collaborative model that really we hope, when working, really how we envision really brings the best of all of these expertise together to support the small business. And I think we're really excited because this year, some of the flexibilities that we're able to provide, we think will actually allow for more time to really engage and build the capacity of our nonprofits partners to be kind of the lynch between the community, those who need the services, and then those others that are part of this web of collaborators that come together to support small businesses. So we do this work because, as you know, the vast majority of businesses in New Hampshire are small businesses. This is the case across the northern Northeast. So we are similar to Vermont and Maine, actually, in this way, in which the vast majority, 99% of our businesses are small businesses, less than 500 employees. But the thing about New Hampshire is that we actually have the vast majority of those are actually these micro businesses, which are 5 and less employees. And so you'll see in a few slides that we're actually really understanding the needs of these businesses through the data you provide, and ensuring that this program continues to meet them. They create significant jobs in our communities, and that's actually shifting in many regions. The data that we collect through the community progress indicators shows that although our larger businesses are growing, those small they are not growing at the rates they were 2 decades ago. And those small and medium-sized businesses are the ones really picking up that job growth and continuing to ensure economic development and growth happens in our communities. And one of the really exciting things that we've been able to do with many of our micro-entrepreneurs, Microenterprise partners, subrecipients over the last year and a half, not quite half, but a year and some, is to implement the Community Navigator pilot program. So as many of you know, this is an SBA funded program. It ensured that we had additional funds, resources, capacity, and technical assistance to reach small businesses that had previously been excluded from these activities. And as we look at the clients that have been served by the Community Navigator pilot program, we find actually that 92% of those clients have been micro-entrepreneur in scale. So they have 5 and less employees. And we were excited, actually, as we think about how to sustain those efforts, we have 2 specific additional services. So we're not in any way taking away from the base funding and support that's provided through micro, but this year we are able to add 2 new ways for you to engage with those practices, so the learning and the technical assistance that we've learned from that Navigator program. We've actually have a new funding category that allows you to continue that work with partner organizations, community partners in your community to reach populations that haven't previously been served, that you can continue the learning that you've been doing and actually deepen it and expand it, and then actually increasing the funds that that the Microenterprise program will provide as you serve target populations. So those target populations have been identified in Navigator. We know they're of the most need in New Hampshire. And this year, Micro will pay additional funding to support them because we just know that their needs are greater and that we need to have the time to really support them. So those are 2 exciting areas of growth in the Micro program this year. And Kevin will talk a little bit more about those in the coming slides. And at this point, I will turn the presentation to him to get into the nitty-gritty of the program itself, how HUD kind of structures and defines it, and how we're going to support you in pulling together those applications to support microenterprises. So thank you very much for being with us today, and Kevin will take the presentation over from here.
Great, thanks, Katie. Just want to remind everybody, if you could keep both your video and your microphone off, that'll help as we go forward. And if you have questions as we go along, please type them into the chat, and we're monitoring the chat. We will be pausing as we go along. If people have individual specific questions, we've got some pauses built into the program. But if you have a question as you're going along, type it into the chat and know that we will get to it at some point. So this program is built on definitions provided by the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, which provides the Community Development Block Grant funding. Actually, amendments to the Housing and Community Development Act in 1992 established this new category of eligibility, and we've been able to take advantage of it for a number of years. So that amendment defines for HUD a microenterprise as a commercial enterprise with 5 or fewer employees, including the owner, or someone who is actively working to develop a new microenterprise business. Let's go on to the next slide. HUD also provides a second qualification criterion. Under CDBG guidance, microenterprise activities must meet the national objective of benefiting low and moderate income people. So therefore, all microenterprise owners must be not only a microenterprise or 5 or fewer employees, but be documented as meeting the HUD definition of low or moderate income. They got to do that before they receive any services. Program partners do this using the county level family income verification form with the business owner or the owners or the person who's trying to start a business. It's not done with the employees, it's just done with the business owner. So once a microenterprise business owner qualifies as LMI, he or she is eligible to receive assistance for that business for up to 3 program years, which do not need to be consecutive. And our program year runs from July 1st to June 30th. Now, this is an important nuance. It's not calendar year, but it's program year. So it's that July 1 to June 30th program year, you've got 3 years of eligibility. Moving on, eligible activities. HUD identified 4 categories of eligible activities for the microenterprise program. The first 3 have formed the core of the micro program that CDFA has administered over the past several years. And those include technical assistance, training, advice, counseling, business support services to the qualifying owners of microenterprises and the individuals who are starting a microenterprise. The second one is financial support for the establishment, stabilization, and expansion of microenterprises, including grants and loans. The third is general support to the owners of microenterprises and people who are developing them, including peer support programs, counseling, childcare, transportation, basically helping to break down the barriers that might prevent one of those individuals from actually getting to and accessing the services. This year, we're adding the 4th eligible activity, which is training and TA and support to increase the capacity of subrecipients to carry out microenterprise activities. And we'll talk more about this in the presentation later on. Next slide. A lot of you will recognize this list. These are the current microenterprise technical assistance partners, the subrecipients. And a number of you on the call are new to the program and are here to learn about the microenterprise program. Some of you are long established partners in delivering the micro program. So we have a little bit of a mix of both old hands and new folks who are exploring whether the micro program would be a good fit for your organization at some point in the future. Next slide. Over the past number of years, we've actually had some great success. We've increased the dollars that have gone out the door, and we've had a pretty steady or growing number of businesses that have been supported. These are some of the numbers. I'll just pause and let you take a look at that and absorb some of the numbers. We have 288 expected businesses to be supported in the current program year. And with any luck, that number will continue to increase and the scope of services and support will continue to increase. So at this point, I'd like to invite those of you who are involved in the program, again, the organizations who are represented on the previous slide, to share a brief anecdote of success from your current microenterprise program. What I'll do is announce the program partner organization, and you can give us like a 30-second summary of something that stood out to you so far this year as we've gone, we're just past the halfway point in the current program year. As I call out your organization, turn off your video, unmute yourself, give us that little anecdote, and then remute yourself when you're done, and I'll call on the next one. Let's start in the north and we'll move to the south. So we'll start with Ren and either Scarlett or I can't see everybody who's here. So Ren, why don't you take it from here?
Hi, Kevin. Hi, everyone. I'm Scarlett. I'm the marketing and programs manager at Ren. Part of the programs that I manage is the CDBG program here at Ren. A quick anecdote about some successes we've had this year. We saw a lot of interest and popularity with the direct grant program. We had $10,000 to give out directly to clients. Not a large amount, but it made a big difference in 4 of our clients' businesses and lives. So that was a great thing. We're hoping to get more of those dollars for the next year. Something that just came up, I spoke to one of our grant recipients yesterday who I hadn't heard from in a while and asked, was everything going well? Could we do anything from her? And she said, she's doing great. She had previously been meeting one-on-one with a bookkeeper. She's a bookkeeper herself. So she was meeting with a bookkeeper who worked at kind of a higher level to up her skills and train her on different things like getting deeper into QuickBooks and that type of thing. And those trainings had gone so well that she no longer was meeting with that woman because she felt she had learned everything she needed. She was able to raise her rates for her business. She was making more money, and she was now at a place where she felt she could take some time to focus on personal projects and look at the next step for her business and get kind of a broader financial picture for her life. So those are the kind of stories we like to hear. That's the point of the program, that you keep moving up in your business and feel good about where you're going. So
thanks, Scarlett. Let's move on to Grafton and COAS.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, Ann, you go first.
Ann Duncan Cooley, Grafton Regional Development. I thought first I'd just share just an observation about the trends that we've seen in the kinds of clients we get, and that is we are seeing startups, but not only that, some employees buying businesses from their owners who are retiring. So helping, for example, a restaurant in Enfield that we worked with purchase a business, and a moving company in that region that also got business advising, and employees are buying the business. We've also made our first loan last month to a Black-owned business in the Upper Valley area, and that business owner worked with SBDC through business advising and then came to us for some financial resources. So we were able to combine both an equipment grant and a loan to help them open a new location. So we're really seeing kind of a ladder of success created by these resources that are really starting to make an impact.
Thanks, Ann. Erica?
Erica with COAS Economic Development. I do have to say my clients have been very excited about the direct grants, and I had the privilege to be the guinea pig going through the down payment grant. It was a huge, it had a rough start, but I want to thank the staff for CDFA for helping make it happen, us making our closing date, and lots of lessons learned for all. And but the impact that it's had in the community and the response from not even just the client, but the rest of the community has been amazing. So I've already got people interested in it for next year. So it was rough, but we got through it, and just the impact has been amazing.
And I'll just add at this point that as a result of that experience, we are refining and improving our guidance. So there'll be more on that to come. But thank you to Erica for being the guinea pig and for walking through the labyrinth with us. You did a great job, and we're really pleased that it worked out for you. Let's move over slightly to the west or to the east. Justin at Belknap, and then probably Rosemary from Wedco, either Rosemary or Jack. But Justin, why don't you take it away?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. It's been great working with Wedco and our team on micro again. It's been interesting to see. I keep calling, these recent months or what have you, like kind of a mixed bag. The interest rates are rising, inflation concerns, but then we're also seeing a fair amount of, business activity. And as other people said, people, maybe like the next generation, if you will, purchasing properties and purchasing businesses and a fair amount of good activity, especially in our downtowns and our main streets. And this program has really supported that. So it's been great to see.
Thanks, Justin. I don't know whether Rosemary or Jack wants to go next, but please do for Wedco.
Yeah, I'm here, Kevin. This is Jack. I'm 2 months in, so this is all of this is relatively new to me, but we have a couple things going with a couple of folks out in the community, and this is the perfect program for them. What I have seen is that so many people start a business based on an idea and a passion, and all the other pieces are sort of missing. And so this program, based on what I've seen over the past 2 months, and I think what we'll see in the future is the perfect implement to getting the folks to the next step of running a successful business. That's been my experience in all of 2 months. Thanks.
Thank you, Jack. Moving farther south, let me invite Maureen Zenoy, who's the Vice President at River Valley Community College, to talk about the Sullivan County program.
Hi there. I'm Maureen Zenoy. Thank you for pronouncing my name right, Kevin. I'm a little longer than 2 months. I started at River Valley in July, and then we had transition. And I do see Allison on here. Hi, Allison. In August, so September 1st, I took over the programs. And I'm really excited about the response that we've had when we really focused on a different integrative marketing plan. And we've had over 26 inquiries for both people who are interested in growing their business as well as new people who have an idea. And so we're focusing on starting a class next week, actually, and we have 8 people who are interested, and the response from Sullivan County has been great. So looking forward to on another call sharing more of those successes. Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen. Continuing into the Southwest with Hannah Grimes, Sarah Powell.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Powell. I'm the program director at the Hannah Grimes Center for Entrepreneurship located in Keene. I was wanting to share about a new client who I am currently helping with getting one of the micro grants. We've been really excited to have access to those during the program this year. It makes a huge impact. And this client is a candle maker. She's been doing, some online sales, and she does a lot of farmers markets and things, but she really wanted to move more into having classes and things like that. So we're going to be able to help her get some equipment to allow her to offer, some candle making classes in her new studio space, which I think is really exciting, really kind of expanding her local opportunity to earn additional revenues and make connections in the community. She's also going to be attending our business lab class on scholarship because of our micro grant funding, which is really exciting. So just a lot of opportunity to wraparound services, help people get the support they need to buy equipment, but also, get into our deeper programming at Hannah Grimes, which is just always a pleasure to have people accessing multiple different resources from us. So we're excited to keep working with those direct grants and hope that they continue into years to come.
Thank you, Sarah. We have a couple of partners who weren't able to join us today. RADC, Laurel Adams had another overlapping commitment. I can say in her behalf that if you look at the 2021 statewide impact at the loans secured, that $8.6 million, more than $7 million of that came from, was originated through RADC. So they have really moved a lot of their clients into more sort of loan resources, which has been incredible. And then our statewide partner, the Small Business Development Center, also has a conflict today. I don't think there's anyone from SBDC on the call, but they are also a partner within the Navigator program and have been doing a great job, not only for their own Pathways to Work and Pathways to Micro program, but their business advisors have been available as important consultants for many of the other subrecipients here today. So thank you all for your efforts and your stories. We'll move on to the specifics of the upcoming program year. So in addition, we've got some basic elements that just as reminders that we're going to continue, and the things that we want you to keep thinking about. The general application information is contained within the CDBG application and program guide. We sent that previously, and we're going to be sending an updated version at the end of the presentation today, because it will reflect a few changes that we'll be talking about today. And there is that detailed Appendix C attached to the application and program guide, which has the very detailed guidance around the micro program. So once again, one of the key elements in your application is understanding how you have gotten to know and can reflect on the need for microservices within your service area. How did you arrive, as you're putting together your application and you've identified the number of target proposed beneficiaries, how did you arrive at that number? Being specific about how you came up with that estimate based on surveys or a backlog of underserved clients in the current program year, feedback from your chambers of commerce, from other economic development partners, closer engagement with new community partners and others who represent underserved communities. Really dig into that question of how your service area is demanding these services. For marketing and outreach, we'd like you to be as detailed and specific about your plans as you can be. Provide examples of marketing approaches and materials that you intend to use. Again, for those of you who are within the Navigator program, you can speak to the nexus between Navigators and the micro program and how you see these coming together. We're continuing to move forward with the use of common forms and reporting processes, including the electronic family income verification form that many of you are already using. We'll continue to use the beneficiary tracking sheet and the standard end of program report that's in place in the current program year. So a lot of the things that we're doing now, we will continue to do in 2023. Let me go on to the next slide. There are several program elements that we also are continuing to do. In addition to the TA and training funding for qualifying micro clients in that traditional $2,500 per qualifying client, based on your feedback, we added a couple of program elements and we'll continue those program elements in the coming year. And here they are. Number one is the community center area incentive. This is basically the economic revitalization zone incentive at $3,500. We're just using a different way of identifying those places. So community center areas have been identified through the regional planning commissions. Those areas are all identified as a GIS layer within New Hampshire Granite, and they really pretty closely align with downtown, Main Street, and village center areas all across the state. So that list is available to anyone through New Hampshire Granite, the statewide GIS program, and there's a link to that resource within the application and program guide. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Secondly, you can continue if you want to provide direct grants to qualifying micro clients who are currently enrolled in your micro TA and training program in 2 categories, up to $5K for machinery and equipment, up to $10K for down payment assistance toward the purchase of a commercial property that's directly related to the business. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that I had this question come up just in the last couple of days. A qualifying micro client may receive only 1 grant of each type during that client's 3 years of micro program eligibility, regardless of the provider. So that client who received the down payment assistance in Berlin through CEDC is no longer eligible for down payment assistance. It's 1 grant of each type over the 3-year period. It doesn't matter who provided that grant. The other thing to remember is that those clients need to be currently enrolled in your technical assistance program and incur those costs in the current year. Loan capital will continue to be available to support micro lending to your qualified clients. Up to $200,000 is available to each program subrecipient if you choose to take advantage of that. Again, this is optional, it's not required. That $200,000 is divided in 2 pieces. Up to $100,000 in CDBG funds, which need to be matched dollar for dollar with funds that CDFA would provide through a line of credit. So you'll see that you can apply for a certain amount of CDBG funding and it will automatically put you on the hook for line of credit funding. And we can talk through how this works. I'll have a little bit more about this later on. Finally, each subrecipient can continue to request funding for program activity costs to help you cover the direct costs to deliver your micro program, such as staff time on general program management, advertising and marketing expenses, and so on. Program activity costs are limited to 20% of your total program costs, and we'll review how to calculate that amount. We've got a budget example coming up a little later in the show. We will host a separate claims and compliance training session later this year, probably in May or June, in which we'll provide a lot more detail and guidance about how to access these different types of funds. Let me pause here and just see if anyone has any questions about these ongoing optional program elements that we had last year. If you go back, Chris, to the previous slide. Any questions on what we've done before and what we're carrying forward to 2023-24? All right, I don't see any questions there. And if you forget about something and want to ask later on, please type it into the chat. So new for 2023-24. Growing largely out of the experience that Erica had in COAS, we're adding a new category of funds to help cover the cost of environmental review. We are adding a target population incentive. We're adding subrecipient technical assistance funds. We're adding the ability to recover a portion of your organization's indirect costs. And we're adding a pre-application meeting with CDFA staff. And all of these pieces came about as a result of direct feedback that we've gotten from you, feedback that you provided to the financial management consultant, conversations that we've been having through the Navigator program, et cetera. We really have tried to listen and hear what you've said are some of the pinch points and difficulties, and to adjust the program. We did a fair amount of research just in the last month or so to figure out how we can incorporate these components. So let me go through these elements one by one. On environmental review, in some cases, such as the case that Erica experienced, a direct grant to a qualifying micro business may trigger a higher level of environmental compliance. That would be in the case where there's a modification to the space that allows a larger piece of machinery to be installed, or the purchase of an existing building. We've created a separate funding category to cover the cost of a more detailed environmental review, which normally is completed by an independent environmental contractor, and only if that review is determined to be needed by HUD guidance. So you'll need to estimate how many of these grants, how many direct grants might require this higher level of review. I know it's a little bit of a shot in the dark, but you can anticipate that this type of review is going to be needed for down payment assistance. As I said, we learned this from COAS. bottom line is that we're trying to eliminate the barriers to you using direct grant funds without the fear of having to cover that environmental review yourself. This is a cost of doing business with CDBG funds, hence this new cost category. Now, we don't have an unlimited supply, so we encourage you to be prudent as you consider which clients most need direct grant assistance. And Erica, is there anything else that, I hate to put you on the spot, but you did mention this. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about your experience having been through this process? We're going to talk about it more when we get into claims and compliance, but anything you missed that you'd like to add about environmental review?
I think one of the other big things that, Chris and I came across of is if it's a mixed use building, there are extra pieces that go along with that than versus just a straight up commercial use building. So you need to plan ahead on that piece too, depending on the type of building.
Great. One of the things we're going to do is provide a sort of a flow chart. So you can see if you've got a client who's interested in down payment assistance, this will sort of walk you through step by step what you need to consider. And if certain things are in play, then you might have to take other steps. So we're working on that now. We'll be refining it and hopefully getting it out to you in the next week or so. The target population incentive. This is similar to the community center area incentive. So for a qualifying micro client who comes from one of the listed target populations, you may budget and claim $3,500 for that client instead of the regular $2,500 for training and technical assistance. We include this incentive because we recognize, as Katie said, it may cost more for you to provide services to micro business owners from underserved communities, and because we want you to continue to focus your outreach and your marketing to those business owners. Michelle and Ann, or maybe it's just Ann today, I know you've been working with both the Upper Valley Business Alliance and with the COAS Childcare Network in trying to reach some of those target populations. Anything you'd like to share about that experience and what you've been able to learn from that targeted outreach?
Thanks, Kevin. It takes a while to evolve to really get to the nut of how you can work best together. So I guess that would be my biggest takeaway, but I think it can be really creative, and we're looking forward to pursuing it. We just got off a discussion with the BIPOC network just before this. So there's a ramp up time with establishing relationships with new organizations and really finding that sweet spot of overlap in your work. So it's not an instant result area of work, but I think it is very promising.
Great. So the third category here, and it sort of speaks directly to what Ann just noted about the time that it takes to sort of cultivate relationships, is the subrecipient technical assistance funds. This is that fourth category of eligible activities that HUD allows. This will enable you to continue and to build and solidify new and creative ways to reach new clients and to meet those clients' needs. Some examples of this kind of funding would include retaining existing or cultivating new community partners from underserved communities to help with outreach and client recruitment. So what Ann just talked about, sort of building a working relationship and trust and understanding with the BIPOC network that's operating within the Upper Valley Business Alliance. Secondly, perhaps continuing or expanding some of your creative and out-of-the-box outreach strategies that are aimed at communities and micro businesses that are from target communities. We've had some experience with this in the Navigator program, and we want to give you a little bit more opportunity for creativity. Third example, conducting an accessibility audit to help understand the barriers that some of your clients may face in accessing your services, either through your website or directly. We have an example of that with Hannah Grimes, realizing they've got a client who speaks English, but whose more comfortable language is Spanish. So trying to translate some materials and provide translation services. Another one might be hiring an outside consultant to review your microloan policies and recommend changes that would make loan capital more accessible to underserved micro businesses. We'll use the pre-application meeting with each prospective subrecipient to discuss with you specific ideas that you have and to figure out whether they're going to be a good fit for this technical assistance program, which is new for both of us, and to help you craft a strong case in your application. So think about that. It's an open-ended opportunity. Obviously, the more we spend on technical assistance for the subrecipient, the less we have for clients. So we're going to have to do a lot of balancing, but we look forward to the conversation with each of you about this opportunity. In addition to the addition of indirect program costs, which a lot of you have been asking for, will finally help you to request reimbursement of some of the day-to-day costs of doing business that cannot be directly attributed to the Microenterprise program or to a particular client. We're talking about things such as occupancy, utilities, telephone, internet, computer equipment, supplies, sort of those other baseline costs of staying open and staying in business. Indirect program costs will be limited to 10% of the total direct program costs. This will be sort of a de minimis category. You won't need to provide, detailed justification, but this will add a recognition of basically the cost of doing business. And again, we will talk more about this in the claims and compliance webinar that we'll be doing later in the spring. And following this session, we're going to provide a revised budget template, which I'll talk about a little bit, to help you calculate how these new funding elements come together for your application. We're also adding a pre-application meeting with CDFA staff. As you can see, we've added a lot of new components, so we want to be sure to be able to answer your questions, explore different options, different solutions that you have, help you create a strong and viable application. We'll set up a 1-hour session over the next couple of weeks, starting on Tuesday. So please send me your availability and I'll create some meeting invites and we'll get that going as soon as possible. Are there any questions on these new program elements? I'm looking at the chat and don't see anything yet, but if you have a direct question, please just turn on your video and unmute yourself. We're a small enough group. Terry, I see you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Just wanted to jump in on the environmental review piece of it, and I'm sure folks know this, but just to emphasize that when subrecipients are thinking about clients or the number of clients that may be needing a higher level environmental review, to think about the time that it takes to conduct the environmental reviews. And that there are consultants around the state that can do this, but there may be a little recruitment and availability of time consideration as well to consider as far as recruiting them.
Thanks, Terry. And that's coming from a point of expertise, because Terry's been doing this a fair bit, and you're already channeling a future slide, Terry. So
sorry.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
It's a really good point, and it's important to restate. So we do have a list. We'll cover a little bit more about environmental review later on. So I don't see any other questions. Let's move on.
Kevin.
Oh, pardon me. Go ahead, Ben.
So for the environmental review, we're having subrecipients select or trying to estimate how many clients that might need a more intensive review.
Correct.
So let's say we undershoot that number and we have $5,000 left of environmental review funds. Near the end of the year, would we be able to transfer those into a different cost center potentially, or will those funds need to be returned back to CDFA?
Yeah, it's a good point. I just approved a budget amendment for Grafton and Coas, because they realized partway through the year that they probably are going to be spending less money on down payment assistance and more of that money on direct grants and technical assistance. So within those program categories, it's relatively easy to move money around. It's more difficult to move money from the program side to the grant administration side, which is the grant administrators who are working for the counties to both go through the administration process, to monitor your activity, et cetera. But within the program, we do have a fair amount of flexibility throughout the year. So that will be something that we'll cover later in the spring on the compliance side, but absolutely, if you get partway into the year and you feel like you need to move in a different direction to meet the need, we'll be able to at least accommodate that request. Any other questions on new program elements before I move on? Josh, go ahead. Josh Arnold.
Sure. Hi, thanks. And feel free to tell me if this isn't relevant to enough people, just say we'll talk about it offline or something. But I think my question is around, if we were to apply to be a subrecipient, and for those who don't know, we're a makerspace, and inside the walls of the makerspace, there's a lot of work studio and tools and equipment and resources that can help people start and incubate businesses. I guess I'm curious if there's a way that these funds could help, I guess offset the membership costs of somebody accessing the existing resources that we have. Yeah.
So Josh, let me suggest, I know you and Jack have just gotten acquainted, and I think you had talked about the possibility of exploring whether you might partner as subrecipients. So that's a level of detail that I'd like to save for a pre-application meeting, because I think it is a relevant question.
Okay.
But it's probably more detailed than we want to get into here. So
totally understand.
Bookmark that question, and if you and Jack want to engage together in a pre-application meeting, I'm happy to do that, and we can dive into those kinds of details.
Excellent. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Not seeing any other questions. Let's move on to the next slide, which is the detailed budget stuff. So after this session, we're going to send you a spreadsheet with a budget template. For the existing subrecipients, I've sent you a template previously, but we've made some changes. And what you're seeing on the screen in red are these new program elements, the target populations, the community center areas, which is similar, but a different way of identifying the space, the indirect program costs, environmental review, and the subrecipient TA fund. So you can throw out the previous spreadsheet that I sent you, and we'll be sending a new one. So let me walk through how this works. There are several different categories, as you can see under where it says expense item on the left-hand side of the budget, coinciding with the program components that we discussed on the previous slide. Technical assistance and training is the typical micro funding that you've been used to in the past. Now note that there are three subcategories: regular clients, regular micro clients, clients from target populations, and clients from community center areas. You need to fill out these numbers, and you can see in the green in this example, the subrecipient, based on the knowledge of their service area, plugged in 15 anticipated regular clients, 20 target population clients, and 5 community center area clients for a total of 40. The spreadsheet automatically calculates the total amount of funding that would then be needed for TA and training. Loan specific TA, the number of clients, you can see the green box. This is money in addition to the regular TA, and there's been some confusion about this in the past. You can take a regular TA client, and as they're going along through their year, and you realize that they're ready to apply for a loan, you can then draw a separate $2,500 for that client currently enrolled, and help them with the process of going through applying for and qualifying for a loan. This is basically loan assistance that's directly related to getting to yes on a loan application. So you'll see in this example, the subrecipient entered 2 loan TA clients, and the spreadsheet calculated the dollar amount of $5,000. Supportive services. This is actually not something that many of you have taken advantage of. It's for the breaking down the barriers of getting your clients to the services that they need: childcare, transportation, peer learning, other kinds of stuff that's kind of not traditional. Again, it's getting a person from A to B, and there may be some barriers that you can help folks overcome. You simply plug in that number under proposed clients, and it automatically carries across to the amount. Direct grants are divided into the 2 subcategories: machinery and equipment, and down payment assistance. In this example, the subrecipient entered 5 machinery and equipment grants and 2 down payment assistance grants, and the dollar amounts are automatically calculated over to the right 2 columns over. So that's that upper portion. You can see the subtotal, program fund subtotal. That's the corpus of your sort of basic program. It's the technical assistance, the support services, and direct grants. That's a really important number because we'll be calculating stuff off that number. The bottom portion of the spreadsheet is really oriented toward the subrecipient costs. Program activity cost is calculated. It's 20% of the program fund subtotal. So there's nothing you need to enter. Either tan or yellow boxes, you just let them be, they auto-populate. The indirect program cost also calculates automatically. It's 10% of that 180,000. We have the new category of environmental review funds. This line item allows you to specifically cover the cost of hiring an outside consultant to do an environmental review. We estimate that cost to be about $4,500 per environmental review. So we plugged in that number as a multiplier. You give us the number of estimated environmental reviews that you want to do. Again, we want to be prudent about this, so we'll talk with you further depending on what the rest of your program looks like. So another new category, subrecipient technical assistance funds. We mentioned this. You'll enter the dollar amount in the green box based on our discussion with you at the pre-application meeting. And in this example, you can see the subrecipient entered $20,000. Katie, I want to give you a chance here to elaborate a little bit further, if you'd like, about this budget category, about the flexibility that it provides around marketing, relationship building with target populations, et cetera.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I think in a couple slides ago, you had talked about some of those things that we had heard from each of you that are really helping in developing your capacity to serve target populations. I think, for instance, time and the preparation of materials to engage with new populations or new groups. So one of the things we hear about sometimes is like these informal business circles, and they may be related to an organization. So say I went to an interesting conversation recently with like small farmers who were really interested in growing their capacity to sort of grow their business. So say that's a population that you know is in your region. You understand that they could use additional technical assistance, potentially financing, but you really don't have expertise in your to be able to really understand their needs and then to meet them. You could hire somebody, even somebody who is a farmer themselves, to really guide you in this work. The group I went to, it was actually part of the Black New England Conference, and it was about BIPOC farmers. And so they were really talking about sort of land ownership and some of their specific needs. So you could hire someone that actually can help you and your staff gain the expertise to be able to meet this specific group. So it's that kind of thing. You know, I think we all, Anne really talked about this, can identify an opportunity to serve populations we're not serving, but then you really need to be sure you have the expertise in your team and can meet those needs. And we're hopeful that this new category of funding will actually give you that that flexibility in your budget to build that expertise and be sure you're meeting those needs. So that's the type of thing we're thinking about, but we'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. Might help to kind of popcorn those for a minute here on the webinar so other colleagues can hear them. And there is a question, Kevin from Ren, on community centers. So let's maybe finish up just this little area discussion around TA, and then we can go to that question as well. And it looks like CEDC has a thought, so go take it away.
Go ahead, Erica.
Just to kind of follow up with Katie, yeah. So if say I have a target population of, it happens to be farmers up in the North Country, and I was thinking about reaching out UNH's farm program and teaming up with them because they have really specific experience when it comes to farming. Is that what you mean by as far as I could bring them in to help with that extra TA?
I think in that case, what we're thinking about is that it's helping you as an organization. So if you're hiring them to provide specific services to an individual farmer or to an individual business, then no.
Okay.
So this is really about helping you and maybe coming up with an outreach strategy or building your capacity or partnering with you to develop materials, or if there was a convening that you wanted to do together for farmers where you're learning more about the farmer's needs, you're building your expertise, you want to contract with cooperative extension to be there side by side with you. And then over time, you've developed that capacity internally. So think about it as technical assistance to build your own organizational capacity to continue to do this on your own over time or in partnership with someone else.
Okay, no,
So,
perfect.
you could use the training money to pay UNH to come in and help you learn about this category of businesses in the North Country, what their needs are, help you to make connections with them, maybe even pay for a representative of one of those farmers to work with you to help you develop targeted marketing materials or things that are going to help build trust and relationships with those eventual clients. So it's everything sort of leading up to, it's helping you as an organization to do a better job of delivering all that stuff in the top of the budget.
That makes sense. Thank you for elaborating.
And Kevin, could Erica use the top of the budget, the technical assistance and training directly to clients, use those dollars to provide the training? If she felt like it would be more efficient to provide that training by somebody else, she could use the top of the training dollars to pay someone to come in and do that training, right?
Yes, provided that those clients have gone through the pre-qualification process. So if you have a qualifying client, so anything that happens in that technical assistance training area or the loan specific TA or support services or direct grants, anything above the line that says program fund subtotal, that's money that's basically supporting the microenterprise itself. That's on the expectation that those microenterprises have gone through the initial intake process. They've all formally filled out a family income verification form, and you verify that they're small enough. So after they've gone through that process, yes, you could hire UNH Cooperative Extension to provide direct TA to one of those farmers to help him or her with a specific business need.
So kind of bridging Ann's feedback and then Erica's, what we're thinking is you use the subrecipient technical assistance money to pay you as the subrecipient all the time it's going to take you staff time to set up that farmer relationship, understand the needs, get it all. And then once the person comes in, if they need expertise that's specific to that business, then you're paying for the specific training with the client specific dollars. So hopefully the two categories, Erica, achieve what you're thinking, and we can talk more in the pre-app meeting, but you kind of have the money to support yourself in setting it up and getting it ready and doing the learning, and then you can actually hire somebody else to help with that direct TA if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think I get it now. So it's perfect. Thank you.
And we'd love to talk more because these are the ideas we want to learn from, because we're hoping that we can really learn from these and ensure that the way that this is set up is meeting those ideas that you have, because this is great.
Do others have questions or examples that you'd like to kind of toss out there to see if it would fit? And we're hitting you with something brand new right now. So if you don't have ideas yet, don't fret. But if you do have an idea, let's hear about it. We can talk more, as I said, during the pre-application meeting. Sarah, did you have a question?
No, I feel like that cleared it up. I just, my wheels are turning. I have a lot of ideas. So I look forward to having follow-up conversation with you all about that.
Yep, absolutely. We want to crank those wheels together and
Cool.
co-create where it's helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
We did have a question from Scarlett and Ren earlier about the community center areas. As I said, the community center areas are a geographic location. There's literally a circle on a map and that identifies these areas within virtually every New Hampshire community. And so the business needs to be located within that polygon. So again, the regional planning commissions worked with communities to draw these circles within their towns to say, these are sort of the core downtown, village center, Main Street areas that we care about. And as Katie said, that those sort of core infrastructure areas are really important to the economic well-being of the community. The Franklin example that she provided is a great one. So working with clients who are located in those physical geographies can have multiplying benefits. So that's where it's where the business is located. If it's a home business, they may be at a bit of a disadvantage because they might be out in the hinterlands, but if that home business is located within one of those community center areas, that's entirely appropriate. What we'll basically do is ask you to create a Google map with a point on it to show us that where that business is located is part of the qualification process. Let's see, other questions? I don't see any others now, so last call for questions on this section before I jump to how this looks in the GMS budget. All right, let's go on to the next slide. So on the spreadsheet that I'm sending you, you're going to have two tabs. One is going to be that sort of worksheet. And once you've filled in the worksheet, it will automatically populate this other tab. And this is what it will look like in the format that the grant administrator will have to enter into the GMS sources and uses category. There's nothing you need to do on here. I just wanted you to see what it looks like. And again, I'll send you the spreadsheet that has the worksheet from the previous slide. It's called a program budget example. And then this budget, which is called the sources and uses example. And they'll be exactly as you see here. Then there'll be two blank ones that are linked together. A project budget template and a sources and uses template. You fill in, if we go back, Chris, to the previous slide, you will fill in all these green boxes on the template, and it will automatically, next slide, populate your budget, which you'll then use to work with your grant administrator. So the grant administrator will need to upload this information into GMS. That's not something that you can do because the application is actually coming from Grafton County, Sullivan County, or Cheshire County. You are acting as the subrecipient. So grant administrators, you'll take note of this. We're actually adjusting the GMS application right now, so it looks just like this. And then your grant administrator will also need to upload this budget template so we can see how your dollars break down and whether it makes sense in addition to the way it's represented here. Any questions about the budgeting process? All right, again, I'll be sending out this template after the meeting. Let's go on to the next slide. So I mentioned we've got 3 applicants. We did change the grant amount limit from $500,000 to $750,000. That's to accommodate these larger amounts of money that are likely to be requested from subrecipients. You can see the current subrecipients by county. I asked the grant administrators to do their public notices in a generic enough way that if we see that there's more demand in one county that might exceed the 750,000, that we might be able to move a subrecipient to operate under a different county. We're not there yet. We need to see your budget first, but we do have a little bit of flexibility there. And again, we'll discuss this in the pre-application meeting. Questions on county applicants? All right, let's go on to the next slide. We're still making a few changes on that microenterprise application. We hope to be able to launch that application by the early part of next week. And we will send out a message to all of you, well, to the grant administrators, actually. We don't need to bother the subrecipients because only the grant administrators will be able to access it. So once we have that, we will send it to you. The funding opportunity will be open and available. And these are the narrative categories, pretty similar, that we are tweaking it a little bit. We're going to have you focus on target populations. We're going to have you break down the number of clients between regular target populations and community center areas. And we'll have you talking a little bit more about how you expect to reach to some of these underserved communities. Any questions on the application? It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty much the same as previously, that just a handful of slightly different questions. All right, at this point, let me turn it over to Chris. We want to give you a little bit of general guidance about claims and compliance, but we'll do the lion's share of that later. So,
great, thanks, Kevin. Hope everyone can hear me. It's nice to see some of you again and to meet some of you. I'll be talking a little bit about claims and just a general overview, as Kevin mentioned, more to come on that at a later date. Micro clients may receive services up to 3 program years, not calendar years. So as Kevin mentioned, a program year runs from July 1st through the following June 30th. If you engage with a client in June of 2023, that client will be eligible to receive continuous services through June of 2025, as long as they don't go past that threshold of like the 1 down payment assistance or those other items that Kevin mentioned. We will provide more detailed compliance training for grant administrators and subrecipients in May or June following the announcement of grant awards. That training will cover the entire claims process for both quarterly claims and as needed claims for direct grants. And as Kevin mentioned, those occur through GMS, which the grant administrator will work with you and the grantee or the county to get claim information together and submit for either an advance or reimbursement. Each of you has also had an initial meeting with our financial consultant team of Jeff Pitkin and Shelley Hatfield, and that team will continue to work with you this spring to provide technical assistance on financial management and documentation in accordance with federal guidance, which will enable us to streamline the claims process. So we look forward to hearing any feedback you might have, even at the subrecipient level, providing that information to the grant administrators for claim submission. If there's any feedback, feel free to let us know, and same with grant administrators and counties as well. And we have the 2 types of claims: the quarterly claims, which cover the client TA training funds on an advanced system, which Kevin had mentioned, program activity cost, program indirect cost, and subrecipient TA funds. So those will happen on a quarterly basis. And then the as needed claims, which require more flexibility when it comes to timeline, are for the direct grants, the environmental review funds, and microloan funds as well. And as noted, incomplete or incorrect claim submissions can result in rejection of provider claims and delay disbursement of funds. I think we probably just have to put that out there just to say that might be a possibility, but we're happy to work with all parties involved as quickly as we can to make sure, if there's any materials you'd like us to review before claims are submitted. I believe we require that in the micro program a couple weeks in advance for us to review, just to make sure everything looks good. But we're happy to work with you throughout that entire process as needed. Any questions related to like the general claims process or anything along those lines? Great, so we can move on to the additional compliance related to grants and loans. And if you apply for and are awarded funds to provide direct grants or microloans, you will need to take the additional compliance steps. The business must get a UEI number, which used to be the DUNS number and is now UEI. And I know that we had gone through that transition process with a lot of you, and we're happy to provide additional technical support as needed with your businesses. And HUD requires an environmental review to be completed prior to the start of any project-related activities, and that encompasses all aggregated project-related activities for the business, not just what is paid for with CDBG funds. So if the purchase of equipment is part of a larger project for expansion or something along those lines, we have to consider the entire aggregated scope of the project when it comes to the environmental review, which triggers the additional compliance that Kevin had mentioned. and Erica had mentioned, and we were providing additional funds for that, and we're also happy to help as best we can. At CDFA, we can't do the environmental review or answer specific questions when it comes to that. We can just basically say, what HUD might require and work with you to identify that early on. And of course, the environmental review consultant will be aware of all those as well. So it's important related to timeline to start that process earlier rather than later, just to make sure that I believe someone had mentioned a general timeline about the environmental review process. It does take anywhere from a few weeks to a month, depending on if any noticing needs to happen. A lot of the times, I know that categorically excluded, not subject to, there's a checklist for that, or subject to, there's a checklist for that, which we have on our resource hub, which provides a lot more information related to what might need to happen for those various levels of environmental review. But as a few people have mentioned, it's good to sort of identify early on what clients might need that additional level to tie that back into the cost and timeline with your program. And for direct grants, the business must complete a certification to confirm that no other federal funds are being used to cover the same cost as the CDBG micro funds. This is the same process that many of you used for the micro CV program, and that ties into duplication of benefits. So basically, it's making sure that there's no duplicate payments made, and that funds are being spent appropriately on the appropriate items, as opposed to there being sort of that the crossing of funds. And in response to your feedback and experience over the past several months, we have a new, more detailed claims checklist that we're going to share for machinery and equipment, and also down payment assistance grants. And as Kevin mentioned, we're working on a flow chart for down payment assistance and other items as well, to make sure we're providing up-to-date compliance documentation and resources to kind of help everyone through that process. And it looks like there's some questions in the chat.
Let me add here.
Yep.
There's limited funding available for direct grants, so you're going to want to think carefully about which clients really need them, and also think carefully about which clients are sort of in the best position to facilitate, quick and efficient delivery of the grants. If we get bogged down with a lot of environmental review and other, I think you're just going to want to think carefully about that as you go through the program. Yes, we can do it. A $5,000 grant requiring a $4,500 environmental review and a lot of time and effort is something you want to think carefully about. When you start getting to a down payment assistance grant of $10,000 for a much larger purchase, then you can start to see the cost benefit. So we're not prescribing it. We're just saying, think carefully about where and when you invite a client to consider a direct grant. There was a question in here too about the size of direct grants and the $5,000 limit. That actually is a dollar limit. That's not a number of grants limit. So if you had a client who received a $2,500 direct grant in, let's say, the current program year, and you discover that client needed a second $2,500 grant in 23-24, that would be possible. Again, I think you'd want to think carefully about what's an equitable way to spread that money around. If that client is truly needy and it's the best way to use the funds, then absolutely, that's your discretion. But I encourage you to think about how best to deploy those funds across the widest number of clients. So Chris, back to you.
Great, thanks, Kevin. So that about sums it up with the general sort of context related to the claims. As noted on this slide, there needs to be proper cost documentation, a direct grant assistance agreement to make sure that there's documentation that client is receiving those services to make them eligible for the direct grant. There's the direct grant checklist. And just using those features in GMS and in our implementation guides and the materials we send out, the grant administrators are familiar with those items and might be requesting different documentation depending on the circumstance. We know that it's easier when everything fits into a nice, neat box, but also understand that That's never really the case, and that's okay. Every business is different. Every situation can be different. So we do have kind of the general compliance items. And then of course, we're always happy to meet with whoever one-on-one or as part of a team to come up with a solution moving forward. Some of this might be addressed in the pre-application meetings and kind of teasing out some of those early questions. But we understand that things happen through the process and we're here to help however we can. And just looking over the chat, if anyone has any questions related to the additional compliance or the claims process, feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, we can move on.
I don't see any, so you can go on to the next one.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone.
So this is
okay,
just
yeah, this is you.
okay. This is just a summary of HUD is pretty specific about making sure that when we're providing funding to a business, these are from their underwriting standards. We're not going to. This is sort of the honor principle. So the direct grant checklist will have these listed on it, and so for all direct grants, you have to be able to say with confidence that the costs are reasonable, and there are ways to do that either through an RFP or some kind of request for proposals or a reasonable assessment of different options for purchasing a piece of equipment. If there is other funding, that other funding is available. So we're not going to front load CDBG funding and wait for something else. So if you're looking for a $10,000 piece of machinery and a $5,000 grant is going to help this, you got to say that other $5,000 is available. That to the extent practicable, we're not substituting CDBG funds for some other source that could be used. This is that duplication of benefits question. That it's actually feasible to get it done. And that if there are funds coming from multiple sources, they're all being distributed in equal amounts at the same time. That's usually a bigger question around bigger projects, but we're not front loading the CDBG money. The direct grants checklist is actually going to have a certification. We will have these 5 statements, and we'll just say, I certify that this is the case, yes or no. If you click no, it's not going to go any further. You click yes, then you are basically confirming that all these steps or all these criteria have been met. Questions on minimum standards for direct grants? Okay, next slide. So here's the schedule. Obviously today with the workshop, and then please let me know as soon as you can when you might be available for a meeting with me and possibly with Katie to start talking about the options and laying out a budget. The application is due on St. Patrick's Day by 4 p.m. That is a hard and fast time. So don't wait, grant administrators, until the last minute, Friday, March 17th. And then we go through our application review in March and April, and we submit a package of recommendations to the Community Development Advisory Committee on Thursday, May 4th. You all will get an invitation to that meeting sometime in late April. And then, as we mentioned, we'll schedule a specific compliance and claims training session in May and June. We work on developing contracts and other specifics for this and get it to GNC. The grant awards are subject to confirmation by CDFA's board and the governor and council. And our goal is to get all that done before June 30th so that when the new program year begins, you can begin expending resources and implementing the program with confidence that the money is there. That's the basic schedule. I'm going to look back here and see that we have a couple more questions. One is, do we have to have multiple bids to justify a reasonable cost? Not necessarily. Chris, can you remind me what's the threshold for small purchases?
Yes, I just was trying to look that up. So for micro purchase, the threshold is $10,000. So anything under $10,000 is subject to HUD, the micro purchase procurement, which basically says that as long as the cost is determined to be reasonable, then you don't have to go out and get quotes on that. Ideally, if it's a piece of equipment or machinery, we're not saying you don't have to get 3 quotes on that. I mean, what we're saying is you can get 3 quotes on that, but you don't necessarily have to, depending on where it falls under the purchase procedures for HUD guidelines.
I think it's helpful. It's helpful to try and confirm that you're not buying the most expensive option that exists and that the cost truly is reasonable. We leave it up to the subrecipient to provide that justification. There is, on the new checklist, there is a place for you to describe what is being purchased and why, and how the client went about identifying it. For claims that we've received so far, there have been web resources that indicate different costs from different vendors. In some cases, folks have actually gotten multiple quotes and have said, this is the quote we're going to choose and here's why. So as long as you've got a reasonable and practical and common sense approach to determining the price with documentation of either what that purchase price would be if you're asking for an advance, or what the purchase price actually was if you're looking for reimbursement, that will be fine. If you have questions about that, you can ping your grant administrator or our compliance team to figure that out.
Oh, sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I just saw about like a fridge, and for instance, no, you likely would not need to get multiple quotes. We basically, you know, the grant administrators and the grantee has to sign off on the claims that are submitted, and when they do that, they're basically saying that, you know, whatever documentation was provided is reasonable to show that you know, it's not like that they're trying to buy, as Kevin mentioned, the most expensive fridge. But we also understand that they might, if it's for a particular business, it might require a particular type of fridge, and in that instance, you know, that can justify a higher cost too. So like Kevin mentioned, you know, feel free to work with us and your grant administrators, but for the most part, as long as it's just reasonable, like cost reasonableness measures, then that will be okay. Thanks.
Another question came in about direct grants. We are offering both reimbursement and advance. So there'll be a checkbox on the direct grant checklist. Is this a reimbursement request or an advance request? If it's a reimbursement request, we need to see an invoice for what was actually purchased, and that purchase needs to have occurred within the current program year. So you can't reimburse someone for a purchase that was made prior to July 1. So we've had this come up. We had someone who said, oh, I bought a piece of equipment back in May. Can I get reimbursement for it? The answer is no. It has to occur within the current program year. So any purchase that occurs from July 1 to June 30th for the upcoming program year would be eligible. If you're talking about an advance, we need to have some quotes or have some understanding of what the price would be for that purchase. And this is a case where someone has given us, you know, an Amazon printout or a document that said, here's what we believe the cost of this machinery item would be. So both reimbursement and advance are possibilities for direct grants. Let's see. Tracy asked, can you explain the advance on a direct grant versus actual cost and repayment process? So I think, Tracy, I answered that question.
Actually, I'm just trying to clarify, since in particular, Scarlett, I know will remember this, with Ren, there was an advance and then the actual costs when they did purchase it didn't add up to that. So there was a reimbursement process. So I just wanted to alert everybody that, you know, get your quotes as close as you can to that price, because you will have to track that, or at least that's my understanding. You want it to be tracked that the advance does match the reimbursement, and then there's a process for giving that money back.
Yep, it's, you know, we want to try to avoid that if we can, but we're also, you know, trying to be prudent and not overspending. And we do, you know, we've talked about what is required, and we're going to be making some refinements to the financial management and tracking for the overall program. But in any kind of direct grant or transfer of funds to the subrecipient, to the client, such as a down payment assistance or direct grant, we need to have an invoice or a quote that shows the value of that, so that we have to be able to show that. For the subrecipient program activity costs and other things like that, we're going to have a different system for that, but any direct grants, we need to have invoices. Terry asked if grant administrators need to attend the pre-app meetings. I would say no, because we're really talking about the core of the program and some detailed questions. If you'd like to attend, you're more than welcome. I know that's a pretty big time burden, but I think once we go through the pre-app meeting with the subrecipient, they should be engaging with you and thinking about what they're going to be needing in GMS and providing you with a lot of the narrative and other details that go into the application. But we've got a little bit of spade work to do with the subrecipients, I think, before we get to that point. Terry, I hope that answers your question. Ann asked about the line of credit part of the loans. What's the interest rate? We have a variable interest rate that's tied to the Wall Street Journal prime rate. There are certain ways to lower that rate. It won't ever go below 2%, but if you're a nonprofit, if you're serving a target population, our credit policy allows for a pulling down of that line of credit to a more reasonable rate that's not prime. And we can talk with you about that. We can give you a copy of that. I believe it's on our website now. And if you just type in credit policy, you should be able to get it. But we can go deeper into that. And does that answer your question? Okay, great. Let's see. Any other questions? I don't see any in the chat. Are there other questions or issues that we have not covered? All right. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your good work so far. We're really looking forward to working with you on some of these new elements and creative approaches. We encourage you to keep working closely. Those of you who have started that process already with Jeff Pitkin and Shelley Hatfield on the financial management side of things, we're going to step back from that and let you all work directly with Jeff and Shelley on the appropriate way to document your financial obligations or meet your financial obligations, both to HUD and to the fact that these are federal funds. We'll come back around to that later this spring, and we'll incorporate those recommendations into our contracting and into our training in May and June. So I will send you the application and program guide. I'll send you the budget template, and grant administrators early next week, we'll let you know when the funding opportunity is open and available. Chris, anything I missed from your perspective?
Nope, I don't think so. Again, if people have questions, feel free to reach out, and thank you all for your time and for hopping on today. And we're excited to work with you going forward.
And Melissa, anything from your perspective that I missed or that you'd like to add?
Nope, this is all sounds great, and just really appreciate everybody sharing their stories and their feedback and helping to inform some new directions for this program, and looking forward to uplifting some more microenterprise business stories in the future.
Thanks. And Melissa will be making a recording of this presentation available on our website. As soon as that's available, she will circulate the link to all of the folks who signed up for today's presentation. So that's it for today. Have a great weekend, everyone. And we look forward to talking with you about your upcoming application.